Good evening, my name is Michael Buyu and welcome to this video of gratitude, giving and inspiration. My video today is going to talk about the resolutions we discussed last time. In my last video I talked about the resolutions and that we make and the reasons why we make them. I explained that we make resolutions because we want to change. We want to see results from the efforts we make. We want to see good, positive results. I further explained that to have our resolutions realized, we must have goals, and that we must have goals that are written down. Because I said further that unless you write down your goals, they will be changing every day, depending on your mood. Your goals are your dreams, and the best time to act on your dreams is now. Do not wait for the right time. Do not wait for the right skill. Do not wait for the right people to be in your life or the right amount of capital. Good ideas are like a book in a shelf. If you don't read it, you don't know what it is, what is in it. And if you read it and you don't apply it, then you can't reap the benefits of it. Knowledge is power only if you apply the knowledge in your life. So now that you have your New Year resolutions, you have your goals, you have written them down into weeks, days, months, and you have the results you expect to see at the end of the year. Tomorrow really should be the first day of the new you and the last day of the old you. I know that sounds better said than done, but how do we get to that point where we say that we're giving up the old us and starting the new you? How do we get to that point? Take a genuine evaluation of yourself. Are you where you want to be spiritually? Are you satisfied with your health? What about your family goals? Your relationship goals? Your career goals? Can you take account of how you have handled all these areas of your life? Are you satisfied? Do you really want to make a change? Either way, whether you make your goals, whether you meet your resolutions, you'll still get results. To effect a change, you must first believe in yourself. You must have faith. Now, what does the Bible tell us about faith? We should look at the Bible and say what the Bible says about faith. Let's look at the book of James. Let's look at the book of James 2:26. Faith without works cannot be called faith. Faith without works is dead. And a dead faith is worse than no faith at all. Faith must work. It must produce. It must be visible. Verbal faith is not enough. Mental faith is insufficient. Faith must be there, but it must be more. It must inspire action. That's what the Bible says about faith. So the idea you have in your mind is dead until you put it into action and until it yields results. Do not let your dreams die. Put them into action and enjoy the process. The constant question about fulfilling our resolutions for the year by changing how we do the things we do and realize different results brings us to the question of how do we do this? How do you change the way you do the things you have done all your life? How do you change your habits? How do you look at things differently? Your habits are as a result of either your culture, your background, your upbringing, and a lot of your actions are subconscious and are very difficult to change. Now, this brings us to a book that I am reading right now by Stephen R. Covey, The Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, what drew me to this book is, if you look at the top, you'll see that over 40 million copies have been sold. Now, 40 million copies. 40 million is a number almost equivalent to the population of my home country, Kenya. 40 million people have read one single book. And I said, if one single book can be read by 40 million people, it means there's something to this book that really requires somebody to read about. And so I say, let me read this book and see what I can share on my YouTube video. And I came to read about the power of a paradigm shift. What is a paradigm shift? The term paradigm shift was introduced by Thomas Kuhn in his highly influential landmark book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Kuhn shows how almost every significant breakthrough in the field of scientific endeavor is first a break with tradition, with old ways of thinking, with old paradigms. For Ptolemy, the great Egyptian astronomer, the earth was the center of the universe. But Copernicus created a paradigm shift and a great deal of resistance and persecution as well by placing the sun at the center. Suddenly, everything took a different interpretation. The Newtonian model of physics was a clockwork paradigm and is still the basis of modern engineering. But it was partial, incomplete. The scientific world was revolutionized by Einstein's paradigm, the relativity paradigm, which had much higher predictive and explanatory value. Until the germ theory was developed, a high percentage of women and children died during childbirth. And no one could understand why. In military skirmishes, more men were dying from small wounds and diseases than from major traumas on the front lines. But as soon as the germ theory was developed, a whole new paradigm, a better improved way of understanding what was happening, made dramatic, significant medical improvement possible. The United States today is the fruit of a paradigm shift. The traditional concept of government for centuries had been a monarchy, the divine right of kings. Then a different paradigm was developed. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And a constitutional democracy was born, unleashing tremendous human energy and ingenuity, and creating a standard of living, of freedom and liberty, of influence and hope, unequaled in the history of the world. Not all paradigm shifts are in the positive directions. As we have observed, the shift from the character ethic to the personality ethic has drawn us away from the very roots that nourish true success and happiness. But whether they shift us in positive or negative directions, whether they are instantaneous or developmental, paradigm shifts move us from one way of seeing the world to another. And those shifts create powerful change. Our paradigms, correct or incorrect, are the sources of our attitudes and behaviors. and ultimately our relationships with others. This is a story about a mini paradigm shift, just to relate to everyday life. I remember a mini paradigm shift I experienced one Sunday morning on a subway in New York. People were sitting quietly, some reading newspapers, some lost in thought, some resting with their eyes closed. It was a calm, peaceful scene. Then suddenly, a man and his children entered the subway car. The children were so loud and rambunctious that instantly the whole climate changed. The man sat down next to me and closed his eyes, apparently oblivious to the situation. The children were yelling back and forth, throwing things, even grabbing people's papers. It was very disturbing. And yet the man sitting next to me did nothing. It was difficult not to feel irritated. I could not believe that he could be so insensitive as to let his own children run wild like that and see that everyone else on the subway felt irritated too. So finally, with what I felt was unusual patience and restraint, I turned to him and said, "Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you couldn't control them a little more. I wonder if you could control them a little more." The man lifted his gaze as if to come to a conscious of the situation for the first time and said softly, "Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where the mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think. And I guess they don't know how to handle it either." Can you imagine what I felt at that moment? My paradigm shifted. Suddenly, I saw things differently. Because I saw differently, I thought differently. I felt differently. I behaved differently. My irritation vanished. I didn't have to worry about controlling my attitude or my behavior. Feelings of sympathy and compassion flowed freely. "Your wife just died? Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you tell me about it? What can I do to help?" Everything changed in an instant. Many people experience a similar fundamental shift in thinking when they face a life-threatening crisis and suddenly see their priorities in a different light, or when they suddenly step into a new role, such as that of a husband or a wife, a parent, a grandparent, a manager, or a leader. We could spend weeks, months, even years laboring with the personality ethic, trying to change our attitudes and behaviors, not even begin to approach the phenomenon of change that occurs spontaneously when we see things differently. It becomes obvious that if we want to make a relatively minor change in our lives, we can perhaps appropriately focus on our attitudes and behaviors. But if we want to make significant quantum change, we need to work on our basic paradigms. In the words of Torre, for every 1,000 hacking at the leaves of evil, there is one striking at the root. We can only achieve quantum improvement in our lives as we quit hacking at the leaves of attitude and behavior and get to work on the root, the paradigms from which our attitudes and behaviors flow. That is a very detailed explanation of what paradigm shift involves and how a paradigm shift in our lives can change the way we think, can change the way we look at the world, and can help us improve and make changes by applying our goals and making sure we get results at the end of the year. Now, I want to thank you very much for taking your time to listen to what I've had to read from the Bible, what I've had to read from this highly acclaimed book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I'd also like you to like this video if you liked it, to share it with your friends and family, and also to subscribe to my channel. Next week, next Sunday, I'll share with you similar stories about how to make change and how to be effective in the changes you want to make. Thank you for listening, and see you next Sunday.